is truth in journalism, where brave men and women gave voice to the voiceless. But then the corporations bought the journalist, poisoning the news that we are fed. With those tainted sources, all we ever ate was a steady diet of status quo. This hijacked narrative hid the truth of mass suffering, injustice, and corruption throughout our land. Status quo, status quo, status quo, status quo. To expose this shift to oligarchy came a band of honest journalists. They left the studio and hit the streets to give the microphone back to the people. From sea to sea, the people were empowered to share their truth. Their voices no longer stifled, reclaimed their power. Join the media revolution now.
Hey there, Jordan Sheridan live on Thursday, June 18th, 2020. Coming live earlier than I normally do because I plan on taking a bike ride this afternoon. Need to get out there, stretch my legs, get a little cardio, clear my head, you know, the usual. So I decided to come live a little bit earlier. And there's enough news to go live all day, to tell you the truth. So looking forward to speaking with you guys and giving you some news and information. Hope everyone's having an okay day. Not a bad audience for 1:40 Eastern time in the afternoon. Let's see. My microphone, by the way, is broken. I have to order a new one, so I'm hoping you could hear me. What? WTF? They've got it all. Good for you, Jordan. Bye, thank you. So a little bit of a update. I like to keep it real, even when keeping it real sometimes, dare I say, is hurtful. So I gave you guys an update yesterday that I was headed to Ithaca, which is upstate New York, to cover. Ithaca, New York actually is on the cusp of becoming the first city in America to cancel rent. Their city council, again, upstate New York, about 4.5 hours from New York City, their city council has voted to basically allow the mayor to sign an executive order to cancel rent for April through June, so the first months of the coronavirus pandemic. Now it's up to the mayor to sign that executive order, but there's also other bureaucracy like New York Governor Andrew Cuomo mandating that the state health department approve anything having to do with coronavirus, even canceling rent. Anyway, so there's been some coverage of the fact that organizers in Ithaca have gotten even a vote to cancel rent. Ithaca, 70% of the city. It's about, I think the city is about 30,000 people or something, not a big city. Anyway, but Ithaca essentially has gone the furthest on even having canceling rent possibly happening. So I wanted to go up there because there's organizers organizing this. There's phone banking going on to put pressure on the state health department to approve it. So, you know, it is what it is, but last night, about 10 o'clock at night, I got an email from some of the organizers in Ithaca with the tenants union that they did, you know, I had spoken with them the day before, telling them, you know, who I was and wanted to come up and interview them and possibly interview people with the, on the city council that voted to cancel rent, possibly interview the mayor. They had expressed to me that they did not want me to come, citing, you know, essentially smears that you all are familiar with from 3 years ago. So they, I guess, looked me up, saw some headlines about an allegation that was made against me, and decided, you know, they didn't want me to come up. So I'm not going to bash them. I totally agree with what they're trying to do in canceling rent. As I'm going to show you today, I think we're already in a very silent Great Depression. So canceling rent is one of many things that needs to happen. I'm human, so it does hurt my feelings that they asked me not to come after we spoke, particularly over something that's just not true. And for those that actually looked into it, no, it's not true. But I always am going to be honest with the audience, so that's what happened. I was supposed to drive up there today, and they told me not to come. So that's it. Not going to bash them. It is what it is. Fortunately, in 2.5, 3 years, I think this is the second time that has happened. One other time was when I wanted to go cover the Keystone XL pipeline in Nebraska, and an environmental group who I guess Googled my name, got cold feet and asked me not to come. There's a lot of talk about on the internet, like fake news and what's real and propaganda and this and that. It sucks when something that isn't true, that I've had to do a lot to kind of dig myself out of a giant hole that honestly I didn't deserve to be in because it wasn't true. It sucks when occasionally people that choose not to do research or just choose to believe whatever lies are on Google or on the internet. It sucks when a vicious lie about you, prevents you from doing your job. Because honestly, all I wanted to do was get attention on this important story. But they asked me not to come, so that's all I could do. So I'm going to move forward, get to the news, but I wanted to tell you exactly what happened because I had every intention of going there. Jamal and I were ready to go, and I saw this email last night. It's hurtful, I'm not going to lie, but fortunately the majority of people know that that's not true about me, that I would never do what was accused of me, and we've been able to build status quo, go all over the country, interviewing people, getting attention on stories that very other outlets are covering. And this group, I don't want to put them on blast because I don't want their cause to be, to be distracted from their cause or for them to get any negative attention. So I'm not going to really get into who I was speaking with from there, but basically the main organizers trying to get free rent in Ithaca asked me not to come after at first being very appreciative that I was coming. So it is what it is. Just wanted to let you know that's why I'm not in Ithaca. I'm still looking into next trips to go on. Can I blame Jenk? Don't get me started on Jenk. I'm already in a bad mood. So don't get me started. So anyway, we go forward. Tomorrow I'll be covering events and protests and a lot of different things in New York for Juneteenth. Jen is on her way to D.C. to cover Juneteenth. Saturday, I believe, there might be a bit of a tense standoff here in New York between counter-protesters who are white supremacists, Blue Lives Matter crew, and protesters. So I'm going to be there for that as well. And I'm looking into where to go next. To tell you the truth, we don't have an endless budget. So I would love, for example, to go fly out to Seattle to cover the autonomous zone, which is now CHOP. At first it was Chaz, now it's being called CHOP, which is kind of this protest. They don't like when you call it a village, so this protest community, I guess you could say. So I'm interested in going to cover that, but the truth is, if we book tickets to go out there, we could get there and it could be gone in 2 days for all we know. Trump has threatened it. I think from what I'm reading, the city of Seattle is kind of becoming a little tired of it. So, sometimes if we had the CNN budget, we say, all right, if we go and it's not there anymore or it quickly gets raided or something like that, whatever. But with us, every trip counts because we don't have endless money. So that's why I'm cautiously looking into the next trip to go. Seth Peterson, $20. F those MFs, Jordan. They'll be sorry when you and Jen make it big. Love everything you do, status quo. Thanks, Seth. Appreciate your continued support. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I'm not looking for pity, but I think part of what attracts me to watching certain people is when I feel like they're just authentic and real. So this kind of came at a bad time for me because I've been trying to get off a sleeping pill that I've been taking for 5 years. I think I'm on like the 6th day of not sleeping with this, and I'm not sleeping that great. And I don't know about you guys, but when I don't sleep, it affects my mood. So I've been feeling a little bit down because I'm not sleeping. I'm probably sleeping like 4 consecutive hours, then waking up, then kind of tossing and turning most of the night. This has been going on for 5 or 6 days because I've been on this medication for 5 years, and now I'm trying to get off of it. So then getting this email from them, we researched your history as a journalist. You should see the email that Jen wrote back to them. Jen backed me up, so I appreciate that. So anyway, smoke the weed. It might happen. It might happen very soon. Anyway, so I don't have it as bad as a lot of people, which I'm about to show you. So I just wanted to be real with you. That's why I'm not in Ithaca. Didn't want you to think like I teased that I was going somewhere and then just like didn't do it. So that's why they didn't want me to come. Whatever. Good luck to them. I'll still cover it because I'll be the bigger person. Because I think it is important if a city in America successfully gets rent canceled, it could be a huge domino to other cities. Can you take melatonin? Yes, I've been taking 2 melatonin, so that's 10 milligrams. But what I was taking is a lot stronger than melatonin, so it's just not. It's a lot of sleepless nights. And for some people are different. Some people could not sleep that long, and they're tired, but they bounce back during the day. For me, my mood suffers, and a lot of I suffer when I don't get enough sleep. So anyway, let's get to it. So obviously, I will say thank you, Gino Fest, 1999 in the super chat. Michigan State employees laid off 1 day a week, so they get the $600 Fed COVID cookie money. Governors say it saves the state $80 million. True? Gino, email me more about this. That's the first I've heard this, that Michigan employees laid off 1 day a week, which basically means having your hours cut. Are also getting the unemployment. That sounds very, very, like a very, very sweet deal. If you could get off once a week, but then get an extra $600, sign me up for that. Email me, info@statuscoup.com if you can. We're still pushing our GoFundMe, so keep it coming if you can in the GoFundMe, because we are going to take more trips, and we've been hiring freelancers. And by the way, we might have big news out of California as soon as today. I don't want to give you any more than that, but we might have big news in the Robert Fuller case, the 24-year-old African-American who LA County sheriffs preemptively declared had killed himself without providing any evidence that he killed himself. And then 5 days later, all of a sudden, now we're investigating as a homicide. We've had freelancer Tina Desiree Berg out there reporting for us. And I don't want to get ahead of Tina, but she might be making some headway into finding out what actually happened the night of his death, which I do not think. I think it's very clear this was not a suicide. So we'll have more on that. Keep pressing that like button. We got 270 people watching and 175 likes. So keep pressing that like button. The more people that press like, the more people that will see this live stream. Jordan, you sick again? No, I'm not sick. I'm not sleeping, but I'm not sick. No. And I'll be covering protests here throughout the weekend for the Juneteenth tomorrow, which is obviously the celebration of the end of slavery, which I'm sure will have a lot of protests going with it, with all the protests that have been going on for weeks. And then on Saturday, there's counter-protests going on here with a lot of the, I'd say Blue Lives Matter, white supremacists, Proud Boys crowd. So I will be covering pro-life.
The protest starts at a Planned Parenthood.
Oh, they're starting at a Planned Parenthood?
Yes.
Oh, so
Their hashtag is Jesus Matters.
Hashtag Jesus Matters.
They're stealing from Black Lives Matter.
So they're stealing from Black Lives Matter. These are the religious zealots. So they'll be starting at Planned Parenthood and I guess making their way somewhere. So, here we go. Jordan, what about the surveillance cams from the business regarding Robert Fuller? Anonymous. Didn't I just tell you I don't want to get ahead of Tina? So I don't want to drop what Tina's doing, but Tina's on it. All I can say is Tina's on it, and it might have something to do with the surveillance cameras for the business. But it does cost money to hire these freelancers around the country. We got to pay Tina. She is a cameraman out there. So leave it in the GoFundMe or the Super Chat, because we're not independent wealthy, and I can't print money out of my behind like the federal government does for corporate bailouts. Which brings me to 1.5 million more workers filed for unemployment insurance last week. This brings the total to 45 million. 45 million. An additional 1.5 million workers filed for unemployment insurance for the first time last week, a drop of just 58,000 claims from the week before, despite reopening efforts nationwide. And remember, I told you this. I don't want to be like, oh, I told you so. But I said this weeks ago. What exactly does reopening? Oh, by the way, Dana Fairbanks, good point. I left this out. Robert Fuller, the 24-year-old black man who was found hung from a tree in the middle of City Hall, now his half-brother has been found dead, shot by police. To be honest, I don't know the full details. I'm going to get into that in a bit. But his half-brother has been shot and killed by police, a different police department, not the LA County Sheriff's, a different police department. So I'll read that to you in a bit. So I said to you weeks ago, what exactly does reopening the economy even mean? Because an economy, you kind of need, what do they call them? Customers. Well, if millions and millions of people have been laid off, millions more have had their hours cut, millions more getting reduced salary, you're going to reopen economies and what? You're not going to have, in a lot of cases, enough business to even meet your overhead. Consumers make up the economy. If consumers have only gotten a $1,200 check, which was spent in 10 seconds for most people, if consumers who have lost their job are struggling just to get unemployment, I'm about to show you the 8-hour line from Kentucky, you don't just reopen the economy and magically everything gets put back together. And keep pressing that like button. We got almost 300 of you watching. 199 of you have pressed the like button. It's a thumbs up button right under the live stream, if you could be so kind. So you have 1.5 million more people filing for unemployment. This is the 13th straight week where more than 1 million people have filed for unemployment. Previous record before the pandemic was in 1982. The numbers come as the country's reopening is in nearly full swing in many states. Total number of people receiving benefits edged down slightly to 20.5 million. More than 45 million have filed for unemployment at some point during the pandemic. About 9.2 million people are also receiving unemployment from a new supplemental benefit available to self-employed and gig workers, bringing the total numbers receiving benefits to about 29 million. The number of initial jobless claims has slowed as employers have begun rehiring workers as businesses reopen, and there have been other positive indications. Retail sales spiked 17.7% in May, although they continue to be down nearly 8% since February. So the unemployment rate remains the highest it's been since the Great Depression. The official rate is 13.3%, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics said that it would have been closer to 16.3% if not for an error its workers are making in the data collection. Why that's really troubling is you have the official unemployment number and then the real unemployment number. The last time the real unemployment number was checked, it was closer to 25%. Thank you for the super chat. Anthony, $2. Day 21 demonstrations in Detroit. Consistency is key. I agree. By the way, I have been looking for a Seattle-based independent journalist to cover the autonomous zone. I've gotten a couple people emailing me or messaging me that they would do it, but frankly, they were kind of viewers/activists. No offense to viewers/activists, but I'm kind of looking more for people who have some experience in journalism. So if you know anyone that's kind of an independent journalist, message me. My DMs on Twitter are open, or email info@statusquo.com. We would love to get a freelancer to cover the autonomous zone or Chaz or Chop now in Seattle. MT Unit, thanks for the super chat, $5, appreciate it. Vicky Blair, $40, really appreciate it, Vicky, that's so nice. I was almost maxed out on my Bernie donations when he suspended. Now I donate to Status Quo because I'm willing to pay for real truth in journalism. Thank you. Vicky, we really, really appreciate that. It is not cheap to bring real truth in journalism. So we really, really appreciate you doing your part. Thanks, Vicky. By the way, we are down in members. We're going to have our members call. I'm thinking next Tuesday, actually. This coming Tuesday, I should say. So if you want to join our members call, statusquo.com/join. You'll get a link to our Zoom call with our members that we do once a month. We were going to do it this week, but Jen wasn't available, so we'll do it on Tuesday. Statusquo.com/join. Sign up for as low as $5 a month. You break that down, it's 16 cents a day. Woo! So, look at this line. You know, the Democrats were pushing, we get $600 unemployment. Yeah, that's if you could actually get the unemployment. This is Kentucky yesterday. An 8-hour line. 8-hour line. Just to speak with a human being for unemployment. It's an 8-hour line. And by the way, they had to cap the line. It would have been longer, but officials basically said beyond the 8-hour line, no more people. We're capping the line. So that's just in Kentucky. Here's a little bit more. After not receiving benefits, hundreds flocked to Frankfurt again to resolve unemployment issues. For the second straight day, hundreds descended upon Kentucky's state capitol on Wednesday, hoping to resolve their unemployment claims after weeks or months of not receiving benefits. Unemployment insurance staff unexpectedly set up shop in the Capitol Education Center on Tuesday to help people navigate claims after a small protest popped up nearby. By Tuesday evening, a few hundred people had been seen, with many reporting they should see their long-awaited money by the end of the week. Unemployment staff returned at 9 a.m. Wednesday, and the Office of Unemployment Services later announced it will continue in-person services on Thursday and Friday for those with outstanding claims from March and April. If you think that Kentucky is the only place where people are not getting their unemployment easily, you are mistaken. This is happening all over the country. State unemployment offices are not really set up for depressions. They're not really set up for global pandemics. Most of them have old equipment. Most of them, are basically set up for your run-of-the-mill unemployment claims. So when you have 1.5 million a week in the U.S., you break that down state by state, most of them are overrun. Swirly swirl, $20. In my city, we are having Juneteenth protests in our town square, and we'll have a protest next week in front of the courthouse with our mayor speaking and a local church leader. Midwest has a lot of healing and growth to do. That's great that continued protests are going on by you, Swirly Swirl. I think we all have a lot of growth to do. And I am very glad that we are seeing continued protests. Jen has been covering protests in D.C., and even though a lot of the protests she's been covering lately it doesn't have as big a numbers as like 3 weeks ago, it still has numbers. I mean, she was covering a protest where they blocked the highway in D.C. There's a couple hundred people there. And this is almost 3 weeks after the original George Floyd protests happened. So, it's hard, just human nature. People lose interest or stop watching if cars aren't on fire or police departments aren't being set on fire. But just the fact that there's still these ongoing protests going are a good thing. So we've been trying to cover as many as possible, even if it seems repetitive, because the point is to show people are staying out in the streets, they're staying organized, they're staying overwhelmingly peaceful, and that's why we're trying to continue to cover that. So, I mean, these numbers are staggering. And this is from Vox. I'm just showing you, since the coronavirus became a thing, I mean, look at these lines all over the country. This is for food in Utah. Food in Massachusetts. Volunteers handing out potatoes donated by Washington Potato Farms in Washington State. This is from May. This is cars wait for food assistance in Orlando, Florida, May. A line for lunch at Sharing and Caring in Minneapolis, end of March. People wait for line in Brooklyn, May, for food at a mosque. Food, clothing, and water, Pennsylvania, end of April. Pickup truck waits for food, Utah, end of April. Work furloughs and layoffs are driving thousands in San Francisco for food. Hundreds of cars wait to receive food, Greater Community Bank in Duquesne, Pittsburgh, end of March. I mean, lines and lines and lines, Greater Pittsburgh. It's still going on. People are still waiting for food. People are still waiting for unemployment. And this, millions relying on pandemic aid can see it end, and they're scared. For millions of Americans left out of work by the coronavirus pandemic, government assistance has been a lifeline preventing a plunge into poverty, hunger, and financial ruin. This summer, that lifeline could snap. The $1,200 checks sent to most households are long gone, at least for those who needed them most, with little imminent prospect for a second round. The lending program that helped millions of small businesses keep workers on the payroll will wind down if Congress does not extend it. By the way, I have heard on social media, a lot of people haven't even gotten those $1,200 checks yet. So I think, even though obviously it's very important that these protests have gotten major coverage, I think kind of lost in the protests is the fact that we're kind of living in a quiet, silent depression. What do you call 45 million people filing for unemployment? If you look at the 2008 financial crash, companies learned how to do more with less. They didn't hire back all of the workers laid off when conditions started to get more favorable. We already started to see before coronavirus. Go to your CVS, go to your Target, go to your movie theater, go to, fill in the blank. Self-checkout. Walmart, self-checkout. Many industries removing cashiers, human bodies, with machines and robots. That will continue and be expedited. Businesses that have lost money and possibly manage to come back from this, possibly instead of hiring back all of their workers, are going to try and do more with less, including the things I just described. More automized workers. Where's the guillotines? And part of the problem is cable news and corporate media can't manage to do two things at once. They could only cover one thing at once or two things at once. Now it's, John Bolton and all the salacious details of his book. I don't feel the need to cover it. The one thing that stands out to me, if it's true, I have no reason not to think it's true, is basically President Trump buttering up the Chinese president, saying, yeah, I think it's fine for you to create concentration camps in China. That's scary. If the president of the United States was basically telling the president of China, in addition to trying to get the president of China to, do more for farmers in America to help Trump get reelected, basically telling him, yeah, that a boy. Go on with your concentration camps in China. All the rest of the details, I don't really care because it's nothing new. We know about Trump. But we're living in a silent depression. It's not getting really covered as a depression. But how many people, you're talking 1/10 of the country right now, unemployed. That's not even to count how many people have had their hours cut. How many people maybe have been bumped from full-time now to freelance with those hours cut? How many people soon are going to be forced to pay more into their health care if they are lucky enough to still have health care through their employer? Have vacation time cut or other benefits cut? Meanwhile, markets may crash so badly that the Fed has to start buying stocks. The Federal Reserve is buying junk bonds and corporate debt ETFs as part of its campaign to revive the American economy. Next on its shopping list, U.S. stocks, as Scott Minerd, a global chief investment officer at Guggenheim Partners, told CNN Business. The S&P 500 has skyrocketed 40% since March 2nd and 3rd when the Fed announced its unprecedented experiment with junk bonds. That surge, coming in the face of the collapse of the real economy, drove up market valuations to dot-com bubble levels. But Minerd thinks a reckoning is coming, and soon. He expects the S&P 500 will retest its March 23rd low of 2,237 over the next month, potentially crumbling as low as 1,600. That would mark a 49% collapse from where the index traded Tuesday during a strong rally. So in English, folks, the Federal Reserve is going to continue buying up junk stocks so that corporations do not suffer. Not so you don't suffer, but so that corporations do not suffer. You just can't make this stuff up. But in making sure those corporations stay in business and don't suffer, they're not making sure people who work for the corporations keep their jobs. No. The strings were already, the loose strings that were attached to the first corporate bailout. Boeing's starting to lay off people. Airlines are starting to lay off people, even though part of the condition of them getting that money was you cannot lay people off. By the way, we got 340 people watching right now. 265 of you have pressed that like button. Can I get another 100 of you to oh so kindly, please press that like button. Really appreciate it. And if you can, keep it coming in the GoFundMe. We really appreciate it. We're pretty close to 109,000. Ultimate goal, 120,000. So we're getting there slowly but surely. Any amount is appreciated in the GoFundMe. So it's just remarkable. It's truly, truly remarkable what's going on. And by the way, this isn't even, we haven't even gotten to the fact. Somebody left. N Starks 007, $5 in the super chat. When are you dropping your Bernie campaign story? Hopefully next week. I'm talking to one outlet about publishing it on their outlet. They're a little overwhelmed at this point. So I'm thinking next week, if it's not through that outlet, we're just going to publish it on statuscoup.com. But I was trying to get it published at a bigger outlet. We should start a Status Coup Mune and grow beans. What's a mune? I don't know what a mune is, but that sounds good. Beans are good for you. So this isn't even to mention, folks, the moratorium on evictions starts to expire like in 2 days here in New York, possibly in other places too. Look at this. Since a statewide moratorium on evictions was first enacted in March, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has insisted that he, quote, took care of the rent issue. He says that the moratorium solves the problem of renters being unable to stay in their homes in the middle of a pandemic and that the most vulnerable are protected. But that isn't the full picture. Cash-strapped New York tenants are still expected to pay what could end up being months' worth of back rent once the moratorium expires. Despite pressures from tenant advocates and elected officials for greater rent and mortgage relief, the governor has deferred action. During a press briefing on Memorial Day, he maintained that if we're still in this chaos in August, we'll figure it out then. That's cold comfort to some tenants, especially come late June 20th to be specific, 2 months from now, who may slip between the cracks of a porous eviction moratorium. The moratorium is in effect until August 20th, but Lopez, who was mentioned earlier in the story, still may have little choice but to eventually leave her apartment or risk being evicted. She lives in an unregulated unit and, as the recipient of disability benefits, has not lost income as a result of COVID-19. That wouldn't have mattered under Cuomo's initial 90-day moratorium, but when the governor extended the pause with a new executive order in May, it came with significant changes. Chief among them is that as of June 20th, 2 days from now, the moratorium will only apply to tenants who have suffered a, quote, financial hardship because of COVID-19 or who qualify for unemployment. That means people like Lopez, along with undocumented immigrants and many with pending eviction cases, could soon find themselves in court with little recourse to fight an eviction during a public health crisis that has claimed more than 21,000 lives from New York City. And because the language of the governor's order extending the moratorium is vague, it has opened the door for loose interpretation from the court system, leaving more tenants vulnerable to becoming homeless amid the outbreak of an infectious disease. Let me just break that down for you in English, folks. The moratorium is supposed to go till August 20th, but Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York, who the corporate media has elevated to hero levels, he's the new leader of the resistance. A lot of Democrats are still crossing their fingers that he'll be airlifted into the DNC in Milwaukee to replace comatose Joe Biden. Technically, the eviction moratorium begins to get peeled back in 2 days from now. And I've already heard from tenants saying, oh yeah, my landlord has told me you got till Saturday. So landlords are already taking advantage because Cuomo's eviction moratorium, was written purposely vague. So you're going to see, from New York to other areas, people starting to get evicted. And if they're lucky, going to court and successfully getting those evictions stopped. By the way, still during a pandemic. If you've been paying attention, the pandemic, which President Trump is pretending does not exist anymore, Florida, Arizona, and Texas set records for new COVID-19 cases. Florida, Texas, and Arizona set records for new COVID-19 cases, and more than a dozen other states are also reporting big jumps in the number of cases as much of the country reopens after months of quarantine. Are the governors in the worst hit states considering another shutdown? Not a chance, if you ask them. No, we're not shutting down. We're going to go forward. Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, said, you have to have society function, no matter how many old people die. Never mind that the Sunshine State recorded 2,610 new cases Wednesday, just below Tuesday's records of 2,783, and the toll rose from 2,993 to 3,018. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said he too is not considering closing the state down. Quote, we are better prepared to deal with COVID-19 today than we were back in March and April. By the way, there's one pattern with all of these folks who are seeing a huge uptick. They started reopening their economies far earlier than other states. They were citing, we don't have too many cases, this and that. So they started reopening their economies, not realizing it was predicted from the beginning that this virus is highly deadly and it was going to move from the epicenters at first in the northeast to the south and then go west. Swirly Swirl, $2. Reasons I want to move to Canada for $1,000, Alex. So essentially, you got people waiting for 8 hours online in places like Kentucky. You got 45 million have lost or filed for unemployment. My guess, maybe half have actually gotten their unemployment, and that's a very conservative estimate. Again, these offices are completely overrun by demand for unemployment. Trump, McConnell, not doing anything else for the people. Pelosi, the Democrats, they put forth a bill that to me was a Band-Aid for a gunshot wound. It called for $1 trillion to go to states to shore up mostly public sector officials. That is not emergency universal basic income for the masses. That does nothing for the people who have lost their health care. An estimated 30 plus million people have lost their employer-based health care that Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden and all of these phony baloney corporatists told you was so sacred, and we cannot rip that sacred, amazing private health care out of the hands of unwitting Americans. Well, it's been ripped out of their hands. So you got between the 30 million new cases of uninsured Americans combined with the 30 million before that who are uninsured, you got roughly 60 million Americans now without health care. Joe Biden's brilliant idea for that is we got to get, lean back on Obamacare. That will solve everything. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats' brilliant idea was to expand Obamacare. And we got one $1,200 check. And if you're lucky, you'll get another one. Bernie has come a little bit further out of witness protection. He's been on the Senate floor railing for more action. He hasn't been organizing his army for any of this action, really. He has endorsed several candidates, including Jamal Bowman in New York, whose primary is Tuesday, against Eliot Engel. Looks like he has a chance. We're going to get into that. Charles Booker in Kentucky. Looks like he has a chance to unseat Chuck Schumer's desired candidate, Amy McGrath. But there's no movement on UBI. There's no movement on expanded Medicare. There's no movement on a massive government jobs program. There's no movement on guaranteeing paychecks for people like most of Europe is doing. Just saying we will cover 80% of paychecks so people stay on the rolls instead of relying on unemployment, which you're seeing is causing 8-hour lines in some places. This is a silent depression that's not being covered as a depression. Part of the reason it's not being covered as a depression is the main thing that has been covered has been the police terrorism protests, which I'm not saying that shouldn't be the main story. We have had a long time coming, this reckoning, not just on police brutality, but racism in corporate America, racism in media, racism in government. So the chickens are coming home to roost. I mean, I tweeted out the other day, I passed Chase Bank in New York, and all of these companies are putting on their windows Black Lives Matter and this and that. Oh, how nice for Chase. By the way, JP Morgan Chase, President Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase. How amazing of them, to put Black Lives Matter on their window after they, like the rest of the big banks, were predators and went into black and brown communities and sold them junk mortgages with the fine print barely in big enough print that you could actually read it and understand it. Yes, they preyed on poor white people too, because some people get triggered when you say, oh, they disproportionately screwed black and brown people. That's because if you look at the 2008 financial crash data, black people were disproportionately foreclosed on more than white people, because these banks' brokers, they bought these junk bonds from brokers that went in and did predatory lending in black and brown neighborhoods disproportionately. So they purchased those. Junk mortgages that were put together called collateral debt obligations or CDOs or something like that, and then sold them off to investors. And the whole house of cards came crashing down. So they screw black people. Then they take their homes. Not to mention these banks like JP Morgan Chase have a long history of charging higher interest rates to black and brown people. And then they put on their window, Black Lives Matter. Same thing with Amazon, who treats black workers terribly. Same thing with fill in the blanks, corporate America. It's literally window dressing. Correct, Michael. Correct. By the way, if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, what are you doing? We just passed 82,000 subscribers, which is pretty awesome. So we're finally moving a little bit on subscriber count. So now we're at 82,100. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. If you are subscribed, every single day, try to get your friends, family to subscribe. Boy, if we could get to 100,000 subscribers by the fall, that would be incredible. Because part of what helps us get better interviews with bigger names and this and that is simply getting our audience up. When I'm trying to reach out to bigger names, they obviously give first dibs to channels with a larger subscriber base, views, all that stuff. We have had a tough time because of the suppression we're dealing with YouTube, but we are starting to grow finally, partly because we've been spending a little bit more money on advertising, which we've been spending more money on advertising because of the GoFundMe. So we're walking the walk here. That's why we've been asking you, if you can, if you can't afford it, we totally get it. But if you can afford it, chip into the GoFundMe, the Super Chat, membership. All of these things make a big difference. It's also what's been helping us pay freelancers around the country to cover these protests. So keep it coming if you can. So what do you think? Am I being dramatic? I think we are in a Great Depression. I think by most counts, real unemployment is basically 25%. I do not think, I say we would be lucky. We would be lucky if you saw 75% of these jobs return. I wouldn't even bank on that. And what are we getting? Joe Biden, Trump, you might not like it, but Trump's going to lose. If the election were held today, Biden would win in a landslide. Biden's not offering anything. His speech I saw yesterday was, besides having Jeb Bush level energy, he's not offering anything other than Trump's terrible. Trump's the Antichrist. But he might pull it off where Hillary Clinton can't, because we're in a depression. And honestly, people will take the comatose, possibly senile, whatever you want to call him, guy, over Trump at that point. But Biden's not offering anything bold. He's not offering UBI. He's not offering Medicare for all. He's not offering a government jobs program. And Trump, we know what Trump's offering, a race war. You think it's a coincidence he wanted to have his rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma on Juneteenth? Al Waski, $5. Give so independent media could keep on trucking. And thank you, Al. Appreciate it. And by the way, sometimes in politics, there's just something called momentum. The Supreme Court decision today is pretty devastating for Trump. Amazing for the 700,000 dreamers out there who now don't have to worry, at least for now, about being deported. That's obviously great news for dreamers and just, if you're a progressive, humanity. But the bottom line is, I think the reason right now there's not the consciousness that we are in a depression is because there's this perfect storm of all these other, I wouldn't call the police terrorism epidemic a depression, but all these other things are going on at once that are clouding from the economic struggle. And somebody said, Jordan, you should get on an unemployment line and do interviews. I think that's a great idea. It's a brilliant idea. I'm going to have to research where the unemployment lines are here and go do that. Shahid Buttar, because I was interested in actually going to San Francisco and covering his campaign on the ground. But, as a journalist, you got to have stuff to cover. Unfortunately, not his fault, but, they're not doing much in person yet because of the ongoing coronavirus, so there wouldn't be much for me to cover. But I will interview him soon. Somebody else mentioned Jen Perelman, who's a great candidate down in Florida, taking on Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Same thing, I would go down there, but there's just not a lot to actually physically cover. So we'll see what happens. I will interview her again. I was supposed to interview Charles Booker this morning, but they rescheduled. So I got two gut punches. Ithaca canceled and Charles Booker rescheduled. But you just got to roll with the punches here. Light of the Moon, $10 in the super chat. Appreciate it. Is Jesse Ventura even trying? Haven't seen any ads from him. I did see Jesse was on Jimmy. I watched some of it. I don't know if it's him or somebody in his family, and they're waiting to see what the results are from that before making a decision. But let me tell you something. If Jesse Ventura gets in this race, I'm not great with predictions. I don't think it's without the realm of possibility that Jesse Ventura can get 15 to 20% of the vote. I really don't think it's with the choices right now are so bad, particularly young people who are kind of like not into voting for Joe Biden. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility at all that Jesse Ventura could get a big slice of the vote. I don't think he would win, but I think he could get a big slice of the vote. Which reminds me, I got to reach out to him. I want to interview Jesse Ventura. Yeah.
Go for it.
By the way, I don't know if you saw.
No, you changed shirts.
Look at this great shirt my brother got me.
Jordan, you changed shirts.
Yeah, I did change shirts.
Oh, okay, you meant your wrestling.
Oh, my brother got me a Bret the Hitman Hart, if you're an old school WWF fan, a Bret the Hitman Hart t-shirt, a Ric Flair Woo t-shirt, and a giant press t-shirt. I don't know why he got them for me. It's nice.
What a wonderful brother.
Yeah, indeed. And a press t-shirt. So maybe I'll wear this out to the protest so they don't fuck with me. Or they will fuck with me because I'm wearing that. So we'll see. Somebody said, love you, Anat. And Anat was here with me when I got that email from Ithaca. So she consoled me for my rejection. So what do you think? And by the way, I'd like to know, what is coronavirus doing to you? We were doing an interview series in the beginning. Maybe we'll start that up again. I asked, I put out a tweet. Let's see where that... Before I went live, I said, how's COVID impacted you economic or socially? Talking about the silent Great Depression. Let's look at this. David Lee, I suffer from depression, anxiety, and alcoholism. It's taken me years to quit drinking and to be a better person that I could try and be proud of. The loneliness and fear brought on by COVID, and particularly the response from our leaders, is leading me back to some dark places. SOS. I hear you, David. I suffer from depression too. Knock on wood. I've been pretty good for years, but being in the apartment all day, I'm lucky enough to have my own company, but it wears on you. The lack of change of scenery, the lack of ability to be social with friends, family. It definitely is putting people who suffer from depression back out there in that bind, and even people who don't suffer from depression are feeling down and anxious. Somebody said, I'm one of the lucky minority, socially, have young kids, no social life anyway. I don't have to go to random kids' birthday parties. Economically, if anything, been working more. I'm lucky that I'm a healthcare worker in a country with universal public healthcare. So you are not in America. Sarah, comedy, sports, and improv trope that performs live every weekend. Can't do shows, so I haven't performed since February. Most of my friends are involved in theater in some way, and the industry is looking pretty bleak right now. Carl says, I'm very fortunate to not be financially impacted. I'm a teacher, so my job is the same. Socially, it's tough because my friends live out of state, and the only way we could see each other is by spending the night, and we can't do that. And then emotionally, I'm just destroyed by the fact that there's so much the government can do, and they're just not doing anything. Because we don't have a government, Carrie. We have the United Corporations of America. I hate how cruel everyone is. They say if you want to stay home, just stay home. That's not how a job works. I'm just perpetually sad about how selfish and evil everything is. I hear you, brother. Furloughed, but don't expect to get it back because it's visitor-based. Living alone in a studio apartment in New York City since March has been really difficult. I'm breaking my lease since I can't afford rent after the $600 expires. Moving with parents at 32 years old. I've been there, man. This is after choosing to work there instead of other offers because it has a huge endowment, so I thought it would be protected. I graduated from a public Ivy summa cum laude, and my work is constantly praised. CMM was interviewing for jobs when it hit, 5 interviews canceled, and the part-time job I accepted was supposed to start end of March, still hasn't gotten the okay from the state for me to begin. So no unemployment since start date was pushed out, just homeschooling kids and racking up debt. God, I'm getting depressed. My local friends hardly reach out to me anymore. The loneliness is really getting to me. My debilitating depression is back, and I don't want to go on meds again, especially since I'll be losing my job in October. Joe Smith. Well, COVID-19 hit us while we lived in a house that was taken out by a tornado. We had a hard time with both, and when we went to find a motel room, it was hard because motels were not giving rooms out due to COVID-19. They wanted us to have documentation. We had no home. It was insane. Oh my God, a tornado and this? So that's just some stories, folks. That's just some stories. Thank you for the super chat, Jonathan Silva, £2. Brett, screw Trump, a WWF reference. By the way, if you're a Shawn Michaels fan, you are not a friend of mine. I am fully in the corner of Bret Hart, and if you're an old school WWF fan, you know what that reference means. Do you know what it means or not?
No.
The WWF screwed my man Bret the Hitman Hart. Anyway.
Is the WWE the one that's staged?
WWF became WWE because the World Wildlife Foundation sued.
That's like the fake thing where the fighting's staged, right?
You know, fake is a relative term. Fake is a relative term. So, that's it. All right, we got 400 people watching. Keep pressing that like button. Now I want to move on to the progressive races next week, June 23rd. Before I move on to that, I want to read some chats. What's going on with you economically? Am I being dramatic? Are we not in a depression? Do we have a sane, moral, ethical country? I don't think so. I think we're in a depression. I think it's going to get worse. I think most of these companies are not hiring people back. I think these state unemployment offices are going to continue to be overrun. I think Trump is more focused on creating a race war than actually doing what I thought he was going to do, which was just, fuck it, I'm going to move left. There's still time. He could still do it. But I thought Trump would probably move left of Biden, do some emergency UBI, expand Medicare, say, do what he did against Hillary, which was move left on a lot of things, and then once he gets reelected, abandon it. But so far, he's not doing that. And I think, of course, these protests are, we need to cover them. They need to be front page news, all that. But let's remember, we're also in a depression. It's only going to get worse. And African Americans have been disproportionately hit by the coronavirus, not just in terms of not just in terms of actually the cases, but the economic harm. Speaking of African Americans, before I get to the race between Jamal Bowman as well as Charles Booker in Kentucky, I want to show you what your support, your super chats. Thank you, Swirly Swirl, $5. This country is not sane, but at least people will have more freedom to work from home and communities are coming together again. This is true. But I want to show you what your support is helping us do. Keep it coming in the GoFundMe if you can. Let's look at some of Tina's report from LA County a couple days ago. She's there now doing follow-up reporting. If you don't know the story, Robert Fuller, a 24-year-old black man, was found hanging from a tree in the middle of City Hall in Palmdale, California on June 10th, so 8 days ago. The police immediately declared it a suicide. Let's see some of the coverage Tina did there a couple days ago.
Let him spew it out.
So why would you put out a public statement saying that it was possible suicide if you don't have all the answers?
Who made that assumption?
You guys remember when the first suicide if you don't have all the answers?
Who made that assumption?
You guys remember what the first coroner said about George Floyd? Do you remember what they said about George Floyd, the first coroner? We need to get another coroner.
Yes.
We need another coroner.
Let's go.
Independent autopsy.
Proper.
Autopsy report says she had no injuries when she was shot 8 times by the police and murdered in her own home.
You guys mishandle every big media case. We have no faith in you after this whole Gabriel thing just happened, and this is now. Also put this sweeping under the rug. You don't have the city's faith at all. And I know y'all don't seem surprised or shocked by it, but we need complete transparency with this.
There's no meeting with the devil. There's no meeting.
To you guys, that way it's non-biased. That's what we're looking for.
Why are we signing petitions to fucking make lynching illegal? And then this happens right away. Why is that going around everywhere?
Right.
And why are we saying it's a suicide before we're trying to pass a petition?
And he wasn't killed in
Come
the
on.
backyard.
Can you humor us?
Why was it right here? Why was it right here in public, in front of City Hall, next to a church, in front of a library? Why was it like that? Who would do that? No black man would hang himself in public like that. And I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that.
Let them read the report.
Three generations removed from slavery. I was here at the advent of the digital watch, and here I am at the advent of 5G technology. And understand, I'm still able to speak to you and to tell you and to give you a little bit of my wisdom and history. And one thing I tell you about praying, I don't pray much no more because about 20 years ago, I turned my life into my prayer. So I live. And life, my life, when you dedicate it to this cause, to this struggle for justice for all people, people of all nationalities, colors, fighting for what's fair and what's right in this world, that's when God bless us all. Amen. Thank you very much for waking up. because there's a consciousness in this world. It's not just in Palmdale. It's not just in Minnesota. It's not just in any other place where this brutality is happening. It's all over this world, and people are waking up.
And that's the problem. That's systematic racism right there. That's systematic racism right there. Y'all see how that we peaceful protest? First of all, we're peaceful. That's the thing. We don't need the police circling around us. We're not fighting. We're talking. Why are y'all circling around us? That's the messed up part. On top of that, why would they even board up all these stores out here in Palmdale, shut down the stores early? I'm a retail worker. They shut down my store early, cut my hours for Black Lives Matter protests. We ain't looting. Nobody has looted out here, but y'all want to board up the stores out here? That's systematic racism right there. And if you're not seeing that, systematic racism, then you tripping. You tripping. And them white folks, I know I love all my white people, and I thank every white person, every Hispanic, everybody who's not Black here, I thank you, and I love you. I love you from the bottom of my heart, and we love you too. When them white people was protesting because of the COVID-19, did they board anything up? When they was out there with rifles and guns, ain't nobody got a gun out here. It was no police out there. It was not a police in sight, but with us, we got the police circling around us trying to stop us, trying to shut us down because they hate us. They hate us, and it's not deeper than what y'all trying to see. It's not because we crazy. It's not because we gangbangers. It's not that. They hate our skin, and it's no deeper than that. It's not deeper than that. They hate our skin, and that's it. And they've been oppressing us for 460 years. Segregation did not end 100 years ago. Our grandparents, my grandmama was segregated.
I might look 29, but I lived through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And my sisters supported the Black Panthers in Oakland. My sister, she designed the Black Panther flag and the dress. And so I come from a legacy of fighters and people who support people who are helping the Black cause. This goes back 401 years ago, in 1619, when they brought your ancestors here by force. And those ancestors should not be forgotten. They laid the foundation for America. Talking about making America great again, make Black people great again. Make everybody great again. We paid our dues. We paid our dues to our ancestors. Don't forget that. They wouldn't let my grandfather in the Union because he was the color of his skin. You know? We can't forget those people. They lived through this. Robert Fuller. He did not hang himself on that tree there.
No, he did not.
First of all, no 21-year-old Black man is going to hang himself to a tree in a court.
Not in Times Square.
And a Black woman was found in the parking lot of a Walmart in Georgia. And they said she committed suicide. No Black woman is going to drive her car to a Walmart and go to say, wait a minute, I'm going to hang myself today behind a Walmart on a tree. It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
This was a hate crime. My sister Norma McClure used to live here in Palmdale, and she told me she died in 2003, and she was an activist. She said that Palmdale and all this area has a lot of Ku Klux Klan, and a lot of racists. They're very racist here.
So we're up here in Lancaster at the protest for the young man that was found hanging from a tree. The sheriff's department is claiming that it was a suicide. I don't buy it. It doesn't make any sense. So we have folks out here today protesting that, asking for an investigation to look into it, and the possibility of it being a lynching from one of the white supremacist groups that are up here in the Palmdale area. But I wanted to talk to you because, A, you have this great vest on. Turn around, show the vest. All of my older viewers will remember the dead Kennedys, right? So had to come and talk to you. So you were also there at the Pan Pacific Park protest last 2 weeks ago, Saturday, where all the violence broke out, and then you came up here today. So tell me a little bit why you're involved in these protests. And
so that's some of Tina's reporting there in Palmdale. She's back up there today doing some more digging on this story. Can you imagine for a second? Tina is a freelance journalist, by the way. We've been using her out in LA. She's been covering these protests, and now she's investigating what actually happened with Robert Fuller. You will not be shocked. Tina has been going, knocking on doors there, knocking on some doors of businesses, looking through camera footage, that kind of thing. Shockingly, mainstream media outlets are not doing it. And the police have taken their sweet time to do it. So you have a black man at the height of civil rights protests all over the country, found hanging from a tree at 4 a.m. The police department almost immediately, less than 24 hours, just declared a suicide without giving any details for what evidence do you have that he killed himself? Did you find a ladder? Did you find a note? Did you speak with family members who said he was wildly depressed and suicidal? They just declared it a suicide, which begs the question, how many of these cases might not all be hangings? How many of these cases do they just declare suicides without actually investigating? How many of these cases, based on the color of the victim's skin, do they just say, wrap it up. This person is not worth doing too much investigating. So they declared it a suicide, presumably with no evidence that he actually took his own life. They've said that there wasn't cameras there, even though where he was hung was pretty much in the middle of City Hall and a busy retail section with a lot of businesses. No cameras, apparently. And this isn't national news. I mean, I've seen some articles about it, but it's not leading any broadcast that I could see. I don't see CNN and MSNBC out there with the protests covering it. I don't see them knocking on doors or knocking on business doors, asking them to go through camera footage. I don't see them doing any homework or research on the history of white supremacist groups in this area in California. This is about 45 minutes north of Los Angeles City. So Tina is doing that, and we're gladly paying her thanks to you. We don't have like a sugar daddy or mama investor to hire like full-time reporters yet. I would love to have the money to hire full-time reporters. We just don't have it yet. We don't. We were kind of getting there, and then this pandemic happened, and we've lost a whole lot of members, unfortunately. So that's why we kind of took out of retirement our GoFundMe. Our membership count is below 1,800 now. It was almost at 2,000 before everything happened. We totally get all the people that have had to cancel. We're continually getting emails from folks that are unfortunately having to cancel because of their economic conditions. We get it, no problem. If you can afford it, sign up to become a member, statuscoup.com/join. You can support us for as low as $5 a month. We'll be having our members call, I believe, on Tuesday, our monthly members call, which is always a lot of fun, through Zoom. You'll get a link to join us as a member. If you can't join us as a member, but you do have a couple bucks, drop it in the GoFundMe there or the Super Chat, whatever floats your boat. But the fact is, whether the police just straight up lied or are incompetent or a mix of both, they misled the public that this man killed himself. There was another man found hung by a tree, another black man hung by a tree 10 days earlier, a half hour north of Palmdale. So 2 black men within 10 days, a half hour from each other in an area with a history of white supremacy groups. And as that African-American woman suggested, Ku Klux Klan. Where is the national media on this? So we'll continue investigating it because, frankly, it's not just police terrorism. It's not just the brutality of Derek Chauvin, ramming his knee into George Floyd's neck, or Rayshard Brooks running away. Yes, even if he got a taser, he was running away from this officer. If he turned around, okay, if he turned around, are you going to die, officer, from a taser? Why was it even why did it escalate to this situation in the first place? Why didn't you just call social services if he fell asleep in a drive-thru, if he seemed inebriated? Does every single problem in America need to end in arrest? Because I got news for you. If that was an upper middle class white guy falling asleep in his car, he had connected parents, I don't think he'd be arrested. So we'll stay on, we will definitely stay on the Robert Fuller case. There's been other black men found hung over the last few days, including here in New York. There was a Latino man actually found hung in Houston. The more I look into that, it does seem that that person actually was depressed. He was a homeless man. The family confirms that he did have some mental health issues, so that seems like it would be more likely scenario for a hanging. But also, let's not forget, it's not like easy to go climb a tree at 4 a.m. You know, you got to bring a ladder or something to get up there. So we'll stay on it. So segue and keep it coming in the super chat, keep it up coming in the GoFundMe. We really appreciate it. Boy, the establishment is coming out to stop Jamal Bowman here in New York. Bowman, the middle school principal, who has gotten a huge amount of momentum, and in one poll, Data for Progress poll, is up over Elliot Engel, who's just, another dime a dozen corporatist. He's the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Let's look, now that Elliot Engel is down, the length that his campaign is going to try and smear Jamal Bowman.
6 warrants, and he still owes thousands. In Albany, they keep records of taxes. Type in a name. Records show Jamal Bowman repeatedly failed to pay his own taxes. The state of New York filed 6 tax warrants against Mr. Bowman. 6 warrants, and he still owes thousands. Shouldn't Mr. Bowman pay his own taxes before he tries to spend ours? DMFI PAC is responsible for the content of the... In Albany, they keep records of taxes. Type in a name.
So what's remarkable about this, not only is Elliot Engel getting a lot of help from Democratic Majority for Israel, which is an Israeli, Zionist super PAC, Intercept also broke that he's getting all of his money from a Republican super PAC. Why is a Republican super PAC trying to re-elect Elliot Engel and feel so threatened by a middle school principal? And now they're smearing Jamal Bowman for the crime of having debt, which, by the way, the district that he's trying to represent, District 16, half of it is the Bronx, some of the poorest areas in the community, which I guarantee you, he'd be representing people that also have debt and might be a little late on his taxes. It's just so interesting that these are the attacks coming out. And by the way, let's give you Jamal Bowman's response.
Hello, everyone. Hope all is well with you. It's Jamal Bowman running for Congress here in the 16th District. So Elliot Engel is allowing a super PAC to, put out some negative ads against us. It's fine. We expected it. It is what it is. When you've been beaten at every point in the campaign, the only thing you can resort to is attack ads. So there's this one out talking about how Jamal Bowman doesn't pay his taxes and he owes thousands of dollars in taxes. And, there have been 6 warrants issued, to Jamal Bowman to pay his taxes. Why doesn't he pay his taxes? So first of all, they say I owe thousands, and the number is 2,000, not 100,000, not 50,000, not 10,000. That's number one. Number two, I file taxes every year. My balance with the state is 0 right now. What Elliot Engel's referring to, or what this PAC was referring to, is a debt I had from 2004 that I didn't even know about until they started researching and exploring, my background. And now that I know about it, I'm working to pay it off. Like millions of Americans who have some kind of debt in some capacity, you pay it off and it is what it is. So because I owe 2,000, like I'm not qualified to be a representative. It's crazy, man. But it's drowning people clutch at straws, and that's what's happening now. So it's a debt from 2004. I just found out about it through their research, paying it off. I've been a city employee my whole life. When you're a city employee, you owe money. They take your money. or they find you and put you in jail. I've been able to save, clear my debt, buy a home. I don't know, but he's desperate. Peace and love, everyone. Just wanted to clear that up. Thanks.
Honestly, I think that's going to help Jamal Bowman. Thank you for the GoFundMe, $50. James Wilkinson. Getting us started. Thank you, James. We're now, what is that? $295 away. $295 away from hitting $109,000. It would definitely spruce up my mood if we could hit $109,000 today. And by the way, Jen is en route to D.C. She will be covering the Juneteenth festivities / protests going on in D.C., and I'll be covering protests here in New York tomorrow and Saturday. Kelly or Keel Jones, $10. Jordan, we want an exclusive of you interviewing your dad about Israel. Oh, God. No, you don't.
You really don't.
You don't. You might tell me to disown my father if you saw that. My father is not only an Israeli zealot, but he's a Trump zealot. I love him, but he's missing some screws. But, I don't know. I mean, if we could get... I guess if I could get my father to do it, which I think he would.
No, boy.
I don't want the audience...
How is he going to defend Trump with these Uyghur
I don't want my father... I don't want my audience to pressure me to disown my father, which might happen. You know? I love my father. He's just a schmuck when it comes to politics in Israel. What can I tell you? But Keel, I'll work on that for you. It's a touchy subject. And yes, I guarantee you my father doesn't even know because Fox News isn't reporting it. The Trump telling the Chinese president, yeah, go on with your concentration camps. I can't read that name, but thanks for the $2. That ad was the yummiest nothing burger this week. Agree. It was ridiculous. So, honestly, what is this? Why should this race matter to you? Honestly, any race where you could get by the way, the primary is the election, the general election. Whoever wins the primary is going to win easily because it's a Democratic district. You get another progressive, that's another number. That's an additional number to add to the progressive ranks. Right now, you got AOC, Rashida Tlaib, who's vulnerable in her primary, Ilhan Omar, Ro Khanna, Mark Pocan, Pramila Jayapal, maybe a couple others that are kind of, on the line as far as progressive credentials. You get more numbers, that's when you could actually start having leverage. That's when you could actually potentially block some of the terrible things Pelosi is doing. That's where you're able to stop Pelosi driving the getaway car as Trump and McConnell robbed the Treasury. Can't get enough of that graphic. This is how you stop. Now, Jamal Bowman getting elected in it will not give us the numbers we need in of itself, but it's just one more progressive body, not to minimize him because I think he's qualified, to finally start doing some blocking of toxic legislation, to finally take the outside-inside strategy and start making demands and having the numbers to actually hold up some of this neoliberal corporatist crap. So it does make a difference. And it does definitely help set the conditions for more progressives to run and defeat establishment candidates. Then you have Charles Booker in Kentucky. Chuck Schumer has, literally, they've poured in over $30 million to Amy McGrath, who, if you watch her ads or seen her in the debate, is a tall, empty glass of water. Military service, that's great, but she ain't proposing anything. I think she's proposing in Kentucky that I'll be the strongest Democrat to work with President Trump. Great. Another enabler. That's what Kentucky needs. So you look at this race. Booker, according to a Data for Progress poll, Data for Progress was pretty on point in the Democratic primaries. Most of the time, their polls ended up, the results were close to their polls. Booker's up 8 points over McGrath, who probably by the end of it will outspend Booker 20 to 1. But that's not the only interesting part. Not only is Booker up 8 points, McGrath, look at that favorable rating versus unfavorable. It's a minus, I think that 34, it's a minus 35. Favorable to unfavorable. This is the strongest candidate. Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer was lobbying her to run for Senate before she even lost her congressional race because she ran for Congress. It's almost like the Democrats are intentionally picking people they know will lose. Booker's got a, +4. Positive to unfavorable. And I got news for you. The general electorate in Kentucky, my guess is a lot of people still don't know him. Still lacking the name recognition. McConnell, underwater. But McGrath, a minus 35 favorability rating, probably because she's had $30 million, so she has just carpeted the airwaves with advertisements, and the more people see, because she's not authentic, she's not proposing anything bold economically. It's a lot of neoliberal talk about protecting Obamacare and this, that, and the other thing. The more people see her, the more they don't like her. And when Schumer was asked about this, he says, Amy McGrath is our candidate. She's a strong candidate. She's doing very well. And I believe that she'll win her primary, and I believe that she'll give McConnell a run for his money. Well, she'll definitely give the donors a run for their money, as in wasting their money. I think this Kentucky primary is very, very important. It's definitely not going to be the easy task to defeat Mitch McConnell. But it will, to show what happens when you actually get a progressive with a bold vision up against somebody like Mitch McConnell. I think it will show the results will be much closer with Booker versus McConnell, a much greater contrast. Eastern Kentucky happens to be very poor. So Booker can bring in a lot of people from Eastern Kentucky that certainly aren't being served by Mitch McConnell. And you never know. McConnell could be taken out along with in a anti-Trump tidal wave, even in Kentucky, where Trump is doing very well. So it will be very interesting to see, because this is still the broader fight nationally between the Hillary Clinton, Obama, Schumer, Pelosi wing of the Democratic Party, which is basically just country club Republicans pretending to be woke, wearing their, what was that? The neck garb they wore while kneeling? Kenta cloth? You know, the pretend woke people from Wokeback Mountain. If progressives could take out these primary challengers in 2 primaries, then you have Bowman pretty much winning, because the general election there is the primary, basically. And then you have a real fight. Again, I don't want to be dishonest. McConnell's not going to be easy to take down, but I think Booker would have a shot. As it stands right now, let me go to the polls where they were. So if the elections were held today, McConnell is up 14 over Booker, factoring in a third candidate, but he's up 20 over McGrath. This is Chuck Schumer's pick. This is the person that's gotten $30 million, who's been on air constantly in Kentucky. So Booker, who I'd say a large portion of Kentucky doesn't even know yet, down just 14. I don't want to say just 14. That's a significant amount. But it's not insurmountable. Whereas you have McConnell up 20. And McConnell will just dust off the old playbook that he has run against other corporatist neoliberal Democrat candidates. Wrap them around the head of Pelosi, pump out ads against Pelosi, Obama, that. He cannot do that with Charles Booker. So it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see the outcome of the Kentucky election as well as the New York primary on Tuesday. Anat, $2. Why, thank you, Anat. Will Kentucky conveniently have voting issues like Georgia? Oh, boy. I can't predict, but when there's a will, there's a way for voter suppression. Let's hope not. We will definitely monitor that. Eddie, $10 in the super chat. Dumb question about Venezuela. If they have most oil reserves, why is Iran delivering oil? Thanks. Well, I mean, there's geopolitical battles over oil. So just because Venezuela has the most reserves doesn't mean there's not other players. And Iran is a major oil player. That's part of why Iran and Saudi Arabia have not liked each other for a very long time. So yes, Venezuela has the most reserves, but Venezuela, isn't the only player in oil. That's for sure. Let me see. GoFundMe. All right. So before I end, let's do a couple questions, comments, concerns. Tell me what's on your radar. Kim just gave $25 to Charles Booker, not Cory Booker. Good, Kim. If you got a couple bucks for a little old status quo, feel free. But happy to have viewers be donating to Booker and Bowman. This is the home stretch. And boy, has Bowman had the cavalry. I mean, look at all this. Randy Weingarten, head of the Teachers Union. Elliot Engel is an American Federation of Teacher Union member and an effective leader in Congress. He has the support of NYSUT, and I'm proud to support his reelection, blah, 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 blah. As a teacher points out, Kat Bresler, I mean, Jamal Bowman paid AFT dues too and was a leader in the fight against grotesque standardized testing. You love to see the union go against one of its own, especially a strong black man leading in the middle of a civil rights movement. So it's just very interesting. You have the Congressional Black Caucus supporting corporatist Elliot Engel against a progressive black man and educator. Tanya H, €10. Hey everyone, sign up and become a member. It's great. Why, thank you, Tanya H. Your check's in the mail. Yes, sign up, become a member. Statuscoup.com/join. Looking forward to our members call. I think we're going to do it on Tuesday of next week. Statuscoup.com/join. The more members, the merrier. So keep signing up. Appreciate it. All right, folks, that's it for today. I will be back tomorrow. I'll be covering protests here on Juneteenth. Also, Jen will be covering protests in D.C. /celebrations, because obviously it's a celebration for the end of slavery. If you're not signed up to our text list, text COUP to 370-370. That's COUP to 370-370. That way you'll get a text when we're live. YouTube generally does not notify people all the time. If they do notify you, a lot of times it comes like a half hour into the live stream. So if you join our text list, you get a text right when we go live. All you got to do is text COUP to 370-370. We really appreciate it. And one last time for those in the back, feel free, if you got a couple bucks, drop it into GoFundMe. It makes a huge difference so that we could keep paying freelancers around the country to cover stories, as well as fund my in the field reporting, as well as Jen. Thank you for watching. I will see you tomorrow.